I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown. And here we are, one of my favorite episodes of the year, my final predictions for the 2026 Oscars in every single category. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. What we've been doing now on our 10th season, 10 years of accurately predicting the Oscars, is doing that. Ever since October, we've been doing deep dives in terms of what's going to get nominated, and now debating what's ultimately going to win. Talking about stats, talking about historical precedent. We have this track record now. You can go back and check out my videos and what I predicted back all the way in 2016 if you'd like. But we ultimately have a great track record here. I'm going to give my predictions. I'm going to give my reasonings for all of the categories. If you want to hear my thoughts on a certain category, feel free to look at the timestamps in the description below or just to see my predictions overall. But if you want to hear my thoughts as to why I went with something, please do stick around. But ultimately, this video is to help you make your own predictions, to hear someone else's thoughts, their reasonings, to either maybe sway you to go one way, or maybe sometimes the complete opposite, sway you in the other direction. That's why I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. We have a very active comment section, which I really love. Be kind to one another down there. If you have any questions as to something you're debating, feel free to comment down below. Maybe I can answer that as well, but also feel free to share some of your predictions and we can have a nice, healthy debate in the comments to see what ultimately happens. I think it's going to be a really great award show. Excited for Conan, and we have some really exciting up in the air acting categories, where most years the acting categories are set and we have to debate about who's going to win production design, but it almost feels flipped this year. The technical categories are kind of boring, but it's the main ones. Maybe even best picture. That could be a huge surprise. We're going to be talking about that now coming here, but at the top I want to say, don't expect me to compare all the different possibilities, the pros and cons. We know that supporting actress, there's a bunch of different winners. Ultimately, though, I'm going to talk about why I ultimately did go with my predictions. What were the ultimately deciding factors that led me to go to what I ended up actually going with. Like I mentioned, all the categories, including even the shorts categories as well. So starting off with Best Picture, all the way down to the lesser, popular categories. We've been doing really well this year, and I hope to continue that as well. So with that out of the way, let's jump into things. Starting off with my prediction for Best Picture, I think the winner will be One Battle After Another. This has been a pretty tight race, I think, going into award season. But if you've been paying attention, One Battle After Another has the statistical facts going behind it. Now, there could be a potential momentum shift towards Sinners. I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if Sinners won. But at the end of the day, we've been doing this for 10 years and we've been successful so many years because we rely on things like other industry award groups and what they tell us. And what we've seen from that is that One Battle After Another is the clear favorite going to the Oscars night. Not only does it have below-the-line support, winning a bunch of industry prizes for things like editing or cinematography, but it also has above-the-line support. So, appreciation from, acting wins like potentially Sean Penn, directing appreciation for Paul Thomas Anderson. And when it has competed in every single major film category at either televised award shows from critics groups like the Golden Globes or Critics' Choice, all the way up until industry awards groups like PGA and the BAFTAs, it has won Best Film. The only kind of category that it didn't win was the kind of quote-unquote Best Picture prize at the Actors Awards, which is really the Best Ensemble prize, which is actually the least predictive of the major kind of industry guild groups. The fact is, it won PGA, which is 8 out of the last 10 years, it's correctly predicted the Oscar winner for Best Picture. So right there, you have an 80% chance. Oh, and it won the BAFTA. Oh, and it has, above the line and below the line support. Now, like I said, could I see a surprise? Absolutely. Sinners has this great package, a typical Best Picture package of a screenplay win, a likely acting win, and then potentially Best Picture. But guess what? So does One Battle After Another, with a likely acting win, a likely screenplay, and then also has, I think, a better shot in directing, in things like editing, and then also has the historical precedent. The PGA win, the likely DGA win. And then if you try to poke a hole at One Battle After Another, I don't think you really see it either. You can't say that it's not a timely movie. I think it very much is. You can't say that it doesn't have above-the-line support or acting support, which it does. And when we see upsets, let's say when Moonlight beats out La La Land or Parasite beats out 1917, those movies weren't nominated for the Actors Award for Best Ensemble, the SAG Award for Best Ensemble, and it was a kind of an indication that they didn't necessarily have that broad industry support, in particular from the actors, the largest group of the Academy. But that's not the case with One Bell After Another. It had 4 actors nominations. It was also nominated for Best Ensemble. It won an Actors Award in Sean Penn. So while the actors may have slightly preferred Sinners, there isn't a dislike for it. So there still will be, I think, a lot of members, particularly actors within the Academy, that still like the movie. Then you have all the people below the line that also really like the movie. But at the end of the day, we can keep things simple. It won PGA. 8 out of the last 10 winners of PGA went on to win the Oscars. That's good enough for me. I'm still going with the stats. I'm still going with the movie that makes the most sense on paper, which is One Battle After Another. Then my prediction for Best Actress, I'm going to go with Jessie Buckley from Hamnet. She is the clear winner out of the 4 acting categories. She's the one I'm most sure is going to win because she has won everywhere. She won at the BAFTA Awards. She won at the Actors Awards, even early on in the season with Critics' Choice and Golden Globes. She has won everywhere. She, compared to her other, potential other winners, the other nominees she's in, her movie is the strongest overall Best Picture movie. I think that's really notable and will help her chances. But she doesn't necessarily need it because she has those stats, that industry backing her as well. I remember seeing the movie all the way back in September and thinking she was going to win because her performance itself is so dynamic, so all-encompassing, and she fits the mold of a younger actress who's been nominated once before, who finally has this big breakout role and allows her to show off her talent and is an absolute dynamite performer. Frankly, I'd be stunned if Jessie Buckley doesn't win. Then my pick for Best Actor, I'm going to go with Michael B. Jordan from Sinners. And I don't know if I would have said this a month ago. As a matter of fact, when the nominations came out, I didn't even predict him to get nominated. I thought it would be a big surprise and a snub. But the way he's run his campaign ever since getting nominated, and the facts of the matter, the stats, I have to, rely on it and say that I was wrong and that I didn't correctly predict his appeal within the Academy. Now, this isn't a done race like the Best Actress category is. I think this is actually the most competitive lead actor race since maybe the past 20 years. It reminds me a lot of even something like the 2022 year. But in a lot of these years, it's between 2 potential contenders, Austin Butler or Brendan Fraser, Chalamet or Adrien Brody. This year, there's potentially 3 winners, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about why I ultimately did go with Michael B. Jordan. So the first part is that when we think about really debates of 2 actors who's going to win, like I mentioned, Brody or Chalamet, or even in the other acting categories in years past. Let's say, Jamie Lee Curtis versus Kerry Condon. Last year, Mikey Madison versus Demi Moore. Almost always, the Oscars go with the movie that they like better. So Brutalist was a slightly stronger movie than A Complete Unknown, had more nominations, had more Oscar wins. Anora, Best Picture winner, beating out something like The Substance. Same thing with the Jamie Lee Curtis here. And Sinners, if you compare it to Chalamet in Barry Supreme or Wagner Moura in The Secret Agent, Sinners is the more likely movie to win Best Picture. It is the most well-liked of that group. 16 nominations, the most in Oscars history. So we know the Academy likes it. So oftentimes in these kind of close, tight categories, they go with the actor who has the strongest movie overall that they like the best. That, without a doubt, is Michael B. Jordan here for Sinners. And when we simplify the race, for a lot of these acting categories, what we like to look at are 2 award shows, the Actors Awards and the BAFTA Awards. Why is that? Well, because they are the 2 most predictive compared to all the other award shows. They're more predictive, more accurate than Critics' Choice or Golden Globes. Also, there are members of those groups, SAG, which votes on the Actors Awards, or the BAFTA members, that also overlap with the Academy. There are members of the Academy that vote on the Oscars that also vote on the Actors Awards, so it's a good correlation. And then oftentimes they're late in the season. I don't care who was the winner in December for a group from the Golden Globes who have no overlap with the Academy. I really care about what the actors have to say because many of those are also members of the Academy. Oh, and they just finished voting, a week or 2 weeks before the Oscars end up finished voting. So there's a correlation there. And then historically, they've also been very accurate. So let's look at those 2 award shows. BAFTA and the Actors Awards. Who won there? BAFTA went to Robert Aramayo for I Swear. He's not nominated at the Oscars, so let's throw that out. Who won at the Actors? Michael B. Jordan for Sinners. That was a surprise, but what it does tell us is that there's strong appreciation for his performance. And at the end of the day, if we're looking at BAFTA and we're looking at the actors, and BAFTA, the person who won there isn't nominated at the Oscars, and the actors is really the only thing we can go off of, and that went to Michael B. Jordan. And you can talk yourself blue in the face in terms of, oh, who potentially came in second at BAFTA. The point is, we won't know, we will never know. What it is an indication, though, is that there wasn't a clear winner at that award show. Versus the actors, when we don't have someone who's not nominated, in the case of the BAFTAs, it went to Michael B. Jordan. That was the deciding factor for me. That combined with the fact that his movie is the more well-liked movie, you have the industry backing, you have the strength of the movie. I think Michael B. Jordan is going to win the Academy Award for Best Actor. I didn't think it was going to happen, a month ago, but now there's too much stats for him to not win it. I think right now he is the favorite, and that's why I'm going with him. Then my pick for Best Supporting Actress, I think Amy Madigan will win for Weapons. And there's not a whole lot of logic here because this is, without a doubt, the most competitive supporting actress, maybe supporting acting race we've seen in the 10 years I've been covering the Oscars. I don't think there's a clear winner whatsoever because you have the actors in BAFTA, like I mentioned, they split. Wunmi Mosaku won at BAFTA, Amy Madigan won at the Actors Awards. Then you look at other kind of televised award shows and you went, oh, well, Tiana Taylor, for example, won at the Golden Globes. And she's also in, my pick for Best Picture. So there's a lot of potential possibilities. I think anyone in this category generally can win. But ultimately, I went with Amy Madigan for a few reasons. The first one is that I think the Actors Awards are the most accurate, particularly with the Best Supporting Actress category. They have been very accurate in the last 15, 20 years, getting it right almost every single year. The Supporting Actress category, they're experts at. And years when they don't get it right, like in 2018, they didn't even nominate the eventual winner in Regina King, so they didn't have a chance to prove their skill there. Or in 2008, Kate Winslet wins for The Reader in Supporting Actress at the Actors Awards, but wins not in Supporting Actress, but Lead Actress at the Oscars. So they're still very accurate almost every single year, and they went with Amy Madigan. Now, usually, I just argued before that in a tight race, go with the film that has the stronger Best Picture chance. But that makes more sense in a 1 versus 1 race. A Adrian Brody and the Brutalist or Chalamet and A Complete Unknown. The fact is, we have a strong 3-horse race. So if I were to say, I'm going to go with Tiana Taylor in One Bell After Another because it's the stronger film, over something like an Amy Madigan in Weapons. But then the question is, well, why am I not going with Wunmi Mosaku, who's in Sinners, which is also a very strong Best Picture contender, who also has an industry surprise, win in BAFTA. So for me, the fact there's actually 3 potential contenders meant to me that I can start to lean more into narratives, into external factors, into maybe what people think is the overall showiest performance, which I do think is Amy Madigan. I like the fact that she's also an older actress that maybe has some friends within the Academy, so it has the kind of older demographic. But then also, Weapons is a movie that I think appeals to younger members of the Academy with its horror aspect. Usually not a lot of older Academy member voters like genre movies, like horror, but a lot of the newer, younger voters do. So you get that kind of combination of older voters liking it, but then also younger voters liking it. I also think this isn't a situation like Glenn Close in The Wife versus Olivia Colman in The Favourite, where The Wife was a movie that no one really liked, so they went with the movie they liked in The Favourite. Yes, One Battle After Another and Sinners are a lot more well-liked than Weapons at the Academy, but Weapons isn't a completely disregarded movie. It got a nomination for PGA for Best Picture. It got an editing nomination. It did show up in a lot of these industry groups. Even though it didn't ultimately make the Oscars and the Academy, it does have some overall awareness and appreciation. So I think in a really tight year, I'm going to go with the more showy performance. In Amy Madigan, I'm going to go with the performance that has a little bit more of a narrative in the sense that she's an older actress, been around, has never won before, where you have 2 younger actresses in Tiana Taylor and Wunmi Mosaku, who kind of cancel each other out, in my opinion. Both good, not necessarily as showy performance as Amy Madigan, in strong potential Best Picture winners. So if you're that kind of a voter, they may split the votes there, versus Amy Madigan, I think, is a completely different, separate voter. It's a voter who really likes Weapons, or really likes the performer itself, or likes the showiness of the performance. And most importantly, she won the Actor Award. The Actor Award is incredibly predictive, in particular the supporting actress predictions in this category. They're very good at it. So it's a really tough category to predict. I ultimately decided to close my eyes and ignore some other facts which don't go in Amy Madigan's favor, and just go with she won the Actors Award. Let's go with that. Then, my pick for Best Supporting Actor, I'm going to go with Sean Penn in One Battle After Another. And I'm going with him because I want my predictions to be consistent. I want to get 100%. I want to get everything right. And in order to do that, it has to make sense. I'm not going to go with, let's say, Delroy Lindo for Sinners and Sinners for director, but then not go with it for something like Best Picture. That wouldn't necessarily make sense. But based on my predictions, I think it's going to be a big night for one bell after another. So I think it needs to pick up at least one acting award. This is where it's going to go. This is where it's going to come from, I think, with Sean Penn in One Ballot After Another. Not only has he won the BAFTA award, but he also won the Actors Award. He doesn't have as much critical support as someone like a Jessie Buckley, who's an absolute lock, but he did win both of the two key industry awards. You can't say that for lead actor or supporting actress, so that's a positive sign. Of course, he is connected to my eventual Best Picture prediction winner and the Best Director winner. That's a strong sign. He is a two-time winner before, so we know that he has some at least appreciation and respect within the Academy. He has the second most amount of screen time in the film, so in the sense that they really like this movie, let's go with the guy who's in most of the movie. And every single year in the 2020s, the Best Picture winner has at least one acting win. I didn't have any other wins for One Battle After Another, so I wanted to give it at least one. This one made the most sense given it has the industry support, and I think it's going to win Best Picture, so it has that connection there. There is no clear number two in my mind. Maybe it's a Stellan Skarsgård, but he didn't get nominated at the Actors Awards, so I don't know if that movie is really well appreciated by Americans. He only won the Golden Globes. He didn't even win Critics' Choice, which went to Jacob Elordi, but then Jacob Elordi won nothing else. So it is kind of a split year, but I think the industry spoke, and the industry ultimately went with a showy performance, a villainous performance, a style of performance that this category has rewarded many times before, whether that be Heath Ledger in The Joker, or Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, or J.K. Simmons in Whiplash. Sean Penn fits that mold in one of the strongest, I think, Best Picture winner of the year, and he's a two-time winner, and he has the industry awards, and you see how things kind of pile up versus the other contenders. What else do they have? I mean, maybe you can see a surprise with the Delroy Lindo and Sinners does really well. I'm not going to rule that out. That's not a crazy prediction, but I'm not going to go and predict something that is going to be a complete surprise. I'm going to go with this kind of safe, logical, most likely pick, which for sure is Sean Penn. Then for Best Director, I'm going to go with Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another. Like I've been mentioning all episode, I think this is going to be a strong winner of the night. And Paul Thomas Anderson, I think, even if Sinners does win, let's say, Best Picture, he will likely still pick up Best Director. That's because only once in the last 10 years has the DGA winner won the Directors Guild Award and then not gone on to win the Directors Prize at the Oscars, and that was 2019, Parasite, Bong Joon-ho. So most of the time, every single year except for once in the past 10 years, the DGA winner goes on to win Directing Prize at the Oscars. Well, who won DGA this year? Paul Thomas Anderson. Who is also the director of my pick for Best Picture? Paul Thomas Anderson. And 5 out of the last 6 Best Picture winners also had their director win for Best Director. So there's a connection already there. So it has a lot of the historical stats. And then you think about it from a narrative point of view as well. He's a director who's been nominated 14 times. He's never won before. He's definitely overdue, made multiple masterpieces. So there, I think maybe some people, even if they go with Sinners for Best Picture, will go, well, I can give Ryan Coogler an award for his next couple of movies. This is maybe my last time for Paul Thomas Anderson. Or Paul Thomas Anderson kind of waited. He didn't win for There Will Be Blood. He didn't win for Phantom Thread or Licorice Pizza. Now, finally, is his time for a lot of people are saying, one of the best movies of the decade. And I think he's been doing very well in this campaign with a lot of his speeches, talking about his directing team, Adam Sumner in particular, who passed, who was his assistant director, and I think that will buy him a lot of goodwill within the Academy as well. So be very surprised if Paul Thomas Anderson doesn't win. Then my pick for Best Original Screenplay, I'm going to go with Sinners. I think this is the absolute lock of the night for Sinners. I know the betting sites have things like score as a more likely possibility for the film, but I'd be absolutely stunned if it doesn't win here. Not only does it have the precursors, let's say the WGA award, which isn't that accurate but did win, also won at BAFTA, which I think is the big award. You know, that's a film that necessarily doesn't do well at international award shows like BAFTA, but still they went with it, so I think that's a strong sign that they generally still really like the movie. It fits the mold as well of past Oscar winners in this category, so yes, it has the stats, but it's also a typical type of winner that I can see happening just based on personal experience covering the Oscars for the past 10 years. It has this original idea. The Academy, I think, will appreciate that factor. Hollywood appreciated that factor, the fact that you had a $300 million original movie that's doing all this awards, love and things like that. A lot of appreciation there. Oftentimes, the original screenplay winner has to have an original idea or an original execution of an idea. Also, if they're going to go with Paul Thomas Anderson for Best Director, this is maybe a prize that they can reward Ryan Coogler, a kind of secondary prize. Okay, we're not going to give you director just yet, but we'll give you the win for screenplay. It fits all the boxes and also has the industry support and is also the strongest movie of the bunch. So I'd be absolutely stunned if Sinners doesn't win for Best Original Screenplay. And then for Best Adapted Screenplay, I'm going to go with One Battle After Another for many of the same reasons. It's the strongest Best Picture contender out of all the other nominees. I'm predicting it to win Best Picture. 7 out of the last 10 winners for Best Picture also picked up a screenplay prize, so there's a strong correlation there. So it'd be odd for me to go for Best Picture for One Battle and then not here. It also won BAFTA at the Adapted Screenplay category and also won the Best Screenplay category at the Golden Globes. I mentioned that just because that was the only time in which One Battle After Another and Sinners actually faced off in a screenplay category, and One Battle After Another won. So I think there's an appreciation for the dialogue, the funniness, the black humor of the film, that kind of dark humor. So mostly I'm picking it because I think it's going to win Best Picture, and there's a strong correlation between those two categories in terms of winners, but also it has the industry stats to back it up as well. So regardless, I think both Paul Thomas Anderson and Ryan Coogler are going to walk away with at least one Oscar coming Oscars night this Sunday. Then my pick for Best Casting, I'm going to go with Sinners. This is the first year of this category, so if anyone's telling you for sure they know it's going to happen, don't listen to them. They're wrong. The fact of the matter is no one really knows what's going to happen. That being said, I feel like I have a good feel for this category. I got all 5 nominations correctly predicted in my predictions nominations video, so felt really good about that. Not everyone had movies like The Secret Agent or Marty Supreme, but I did. And I mentioned that because I was able to get a good feel of what this category is going to do based on looking at 2 main award shows and their categories. BAFTA's award for Best Casting and the Actors Award for Best Ensemble. So let's look at their winners. If they were so helpful for the nominations for me, let's look at their winners. Casting at BAFTA went to I Swear. That's not nominated at the Oscars, let's throw that out. The Actors Award for Best Ensemble went to Sinners. This category also has a Guild award show for the people in the Casting Guild, and they gave their prize for Best Casting in a drama film to Sinners, beating out other potential possibilities in Marty Supreme or Hamnet, so that's a positive, good sign there. The movie, aside from One Battle After Another, I think is the strongest of the group, so in terms of just being a well-liked movie, that makes the most sense there. And then when you think about its casting, it's really well variedied. You have a huge ensemble of a lot of different actors who are playing together on screen. You have established movie stars like Michael B. Jordan, and then younger, newer actors like Miles Caton. So old and young, movie star, non-movie star, black, white, Asian. You have just a huge variety of all different types of people. And I think that added factor will be like, oh, there's just so many people that they had to cast. So when we look at the technical categories, oftentimes the most score wins for score, or the most costumes wins for costumes. I think the most casting in many ways is either The Secret Agent or Sinners. Sinners being the more well-liked movie with some of those key industry precursors. I'm going with Sinners. Then for Best Cinematography, my pick is One Battle After Another, and I feel pretty confident in this one. I know a lot of people early on in the season, especially from critics groups, they were going with Sinners. Critics' Choice Awards went with Train Dreams. No one was thinking about One Battle After Another, but we were early on it, especially when it won the BSC. That was really key. And when we talk about the industry awards, that's the awards that we care about. The critics is can be somewhat helpful and instructive, sure, but ultimately I want to look at the industry groups. And what did the industry say? The British Society of Cinematographers, One Battle. American Society of Cinematographers, One Battle. BAFTA, One Battle. Everyone in the industry has clearly put their support behind One Battle After Another. Could I see a surprise? Sure. If Sinners overperforms and gets a couple of these technical nominations, I wouldn't be shocked at all. But like I mentioned before, I'm trying to get 100% with my predictions, 100% right. It would be crazy for me to not go with the movie that I think is going to win Best Picture that also has the industry support in something like cinematography. And then when you think about it too, I think it makes sense. One of the most iconic moments of the movie was that hilly car chase. You think of the camera work. How do they do that? How do they pull that off? There is an element to the cinematography that I think is well appreciated. strong potential, and I think Best Picture winner should be enough, plus the industry support. I don't really care about critics' prizes, I care about industry support, and one battle after another has it in spades. Then my pick for Best Animated Film, I went with K-Pop Demon Hunters. Not a surprise here, it is the movie animated sensation of the year. Oftentimes the Oscars do like to go with the big sensation of the year, whether that be Frozen or Encanto or the first Zootopia. They in particular like big sensations that break out box office or culturally, but also original, unique movies, which K-Pop Demon Hunters is. It's an original idea. It's not a sequel. They don't like sequels. We've seen sequels like Across the Spider-Verse be in contention and then ultimately lose out to original movies. So I don't think the BAFTA winner, Zootopia 2, is going to win here because it's a sequel. Also, K-Pop Demon Hunters wasn't nominated at BAFTA. Pretty much every place it was nominated, dominated at the Annies, dominated at the Golden Globe Awards. So very likely winner. I'd be surprised if it doesn't win. Then my pick for Best Documentary, I went with The Perfect Neighbor. And I don't feel super confident about this prediction, but that's mostly because I haven't had a good feel for this category. I only predicted one out of these 5 potential nominees at the Oscars. Now, that's also to say the industry overall has very scattered opinions on documentaries this year, which is why this category is so difficult to predict. There is no consistent winner. You know, Come See Me in the Good Light wins at Cinema Eye. Mr. Nobody Against Putin wins at BAFTA. 2,000 Meters to Andreevka, which isn't even nominated, wins at DGA. My Mom Jane won at PGA, and that's not nominated. So we have no kind of clear and consistent winner, which makes things very difficult. So therefore, it relies me to look at external factors. So I kind of wanted to run through those. The first is accessibility. Usually when we talk about a group of 10,000 Academy Award member voters, if your movie is campaigned, is easy to see for a lot of voters, that's going to be the movie that I think most people are going to watch and like and be resonant with ultimately. What's that winner there? I think The Perfect Neighbor, the most watched movie on Netflix, has that Netflix kind of campaigning behind it, so it's very easy to see. Then some other external factors that we know matters are social issues. Usually we see past winners on the Israel-Palestine conflict, on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and that matters, the social factor of it. So that's maybe a pro side to something like Mr. Nobody Against Putin or Cutting Through Rocks. But Perfect Neighbor is also about a social issue, more of an American issue rather than a geopolitical one, but still a social issue. So for me, that wasn't a determining factor of this year. So then the final thing that we can also look at is critical support. 3 out of the last 5 documentary award winners at the Oscars had also the most critics groups prizes. That was the clear critical favorite. That being Summer of Soul, 20 Days in Mariupol, No Other Land. Now, notably the 20 Days in Mariupol, actually the documentary that had the most critics prizes was Still, a Michael J. Fox story, but number 2 was 20 Days in Mariupol, and I think that counts because Still wasn't nominated at the Oscars. So the Oscar-nominated documentary that has the most critics prizes, 3 out of the last 5 years, was the winner. The other 2 years were the Navalny year and the My Octopus Teacher win, except those won because they had broad industry support. They had won both PGA and BAFTA. So this year, do we have a PGA and BAFTA overlap? We do not. So let's go with the critically acclaimed movie, the one that has the most critics groups. Which movie is that? By far, The Perfect Neighbor. So that's why I ultimately went with The Perfect Neighbor. In a year where you have all the industry groups very split up, at least with Perfect Neighbor, you have Critics' Choice Award and Ace Eddie Award, so some industry support. You have the clear amount of critics support, and it has that broad appeal and that accessibility appeal. The only thing it doesn't really totally have is the social issue factor, but I don't think that's really going to be a huge differentiator because it still is a very socially conscious movie. It's not a geopolitical one like we've seen in years past, but it still has ideas and thoughts on its mind, and a very American one where I do think will resonate with a lot of American Academy Award members. Then my prediction for Best Production Design, I went with Frankenstein. We can be short with this one. Could there be a surprise with something like Sinners? Maybe. But actually, I think the number 2 in this category is Hamnet. It beat out Sinners of the Decorators Society in that category, within the drama category, or the kind of historical period category. And Frankenstein actually won as well, but in the sci-fi category, or the sci-fi fantasy category. Regardless, Frankenstein won at Set Decorator Society, which is an industry award that we like to look at. Won at the Art Directors Guild. Won at BAFTA. When we think about past Guillermo del Toro movies that get nominated for Best Picture that are major Oscar contenders, movies like Pan's Labyrinth or The Shape of Water, they win. Both those movies won in production design. I think the same thing's going to happen here. This group actually doesn't really prefer the strength of the film, so much so as they prefer the actual work. So a movie like Poor Things beats out the eventual Best Picture winner in Oppenheimer. Last year, Wicked beat out a stronger Best Picture movie in something like Conclave. So they don't really like to go with the stronger movie. So I'm not really going to go with Sinners or Hamnet. I understand Frankenstein's maybe the weaker movie, but it has the industry group prizes. It has a lot of technical appreciation, not a lot of acting nominations, but still 9 total nominations because it gets in a lot of these below the line categories. And they appreciate real built sets, creating a world, all of which Frankenstein accomplished. I think Frankenstein's going to win for production design. Then for Best Costume Design, I also went with Frankenstein. I think it makes sense as a pair. The past 2 years, the production design winner and the costume design winner have overlapped, have been the same film. I think the same thing is going to happen this year. Even more of a guarantee for costume design. It is the classic kind of a winner that they like to reward. When you think about it, it is that period that they love, 19th century, big dresses, big gowns, fancy suits. You have the fantasy element as well with the dressing of Frankenstein, so you have that great kind of a combination. Also has those industry prizes, Costume Designers Guild Award, BAFTA Award. So a lot of things really going forward from the industry point of view. Well-liked movie, still Best Picture, nominee. Not necessarily that matters, but is always helpful to have. So again, an absolute lock, I think, in this category in particular, because it has that perfect combination of industry support and the type of winner that the Oscars like to reward. And then for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, I also went with Frankenstein. The final of Frankenstein's wins here, but I wanted to group them all together here because I do think Frankenstein will go on a run and get that production design, costume design overlap. But in makeup, it's a different reasoning. Yes, it has some industry support. It won the BAFTA, which is important. It won a key prosthetics category at the Makeup and Hairstyling Guild. But importantly for me, it has major prosthetics connected to a nominated actor. Pretty much 7 out of the last 8 years at the Oscars, the winner of the Makeup Award is connected to either a winner in an acting category or at least a nominee in an acting category. Last year, a prime example. Demi Moore doesn't win the Oscar. It doesn't matter. The Substance wins for makeup because it has connections to Demi Moore, who has the crazy makeup in that film. But even when the actor ultimately does win, let's say Brendan Fraser, The Whale wins for something like Best Makeup, there is a strong connection because it's not necessarily the Best Makeup Award as it is the Best Prosthetics Award. So let's look at the 2 contenders here, which would be either Sinners or Frankenstein. Sinners, its makeup is connected to the character that played by Jack O'Connell. Jack O'Connell is not nominated at the Oscars. Frankenstein, its major prosthetics is connected to Jacob Elordi. Jacob Elordi is nominated for Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. So there's a strong connection every single year. It doesn't really go to the movie that is the most well-liked. It goes to the movie that has the major person that's taking on that prosthetics. They're nominated at the Oscars. That's the case here with Frankenstein. Frankenstein fits that mold, has that industry kind of support. I'm not going to bet against it. I'm still going to go with Frankenstein for Best Makeup. Best Score, I went with Sinners, the clear favorite going into Oscars night. You have Ludwig Göransson, who was a 2-time winner, very well respected. When you think about the movie, you think about the music, that kind of classic acoustic guitar, but then some of the electric stuff that goes on later on in the film. It's been winning pretty much everywhere. Golden Globes, BAFTA, Society of Composers and Song Lyricists. The strong movie. Be stunned if it doesn't win for Best Score. Best Original Song, I went with Golden from KPop Demon Hunters. I think this is a little bit closer than a lot of people think. I Lied to You from Sinners is a song that's key to that movie's success and is in the scene of the year from Sinners. But Golden is an absolute phenomenon. Not only did it win it, let's say, an award show like the Grammys for Best Original Song within a film, it was also competing for Best Song at the Grammys. So it has some support already there, even though there's no overlap between the Grammys and the Oscars. It did win an award show, a major award show, in the song category. But actually, the stat that's the most kind of critical to me is that it won the Golden Globe for Best Original Song. Now, that may not be a huge surprise or say, oh, Connor, does the Golden Globes really matter? And no, not really. But what I think is notable is that the Golden Globes have never given Best Original Song to an animated film. Even in the years where we knew Frozen was going to win for Let It Go, or all the way back in 2001 when Monsters, Inc. won for its Best Original Song at the Oscars, didn't win at the Golden Globes. Even the Remember Me year from Coco back in 2017, they went with a different song. For some reason, the Golden Globes don't like rewarding animated movies with Best Original Song, and yet those movies still end up winning at the Oscars. So the fact that the Golden Globes, regardless, still went with the animated film song, I think is just a testament to how much this song is a huge phenomenon. It's one of the biggest songs of the year. Everyone recognizes it immediately. It'd be weird to reward I Lied to You in the sense that it's just not as popular of a song. I think Golden, the fact that it was a phenomenon, the fact that it was so popular, is kind of undeniable. And I do think Golden will win here for Best Song. Then for Best Sound, I'm going to go with F1. You have a Best Picture nominee, and the fact that it got in for Best Picture, I think, is a testament to the fact that the Academy really likes it. Now, a lot of people were predicting it for, Best Picture, so it getting in is a strong sign for its overall support within the Academy. Then you think about the other sound kind of guild awards. At CAS, the Cinema Audio Society, it went for its kind of major prize to F1. That's a good, very predictive group, so that's a strong sign there. BAFTA is another very predictive group at predicting the Oscars winner for Best Sound. 8 out of the last 10 years, the BAFTA winner also won Best Sound at the Oscars, even in surprise years like the Zone of Interest year or in Arrival back in 2016. Personally, I think it makes sense when you think of Ford v Ferrari and those race cars. It won. Or Top Gun Maverick with its loud jets and vehicles, it won. F1, I think, will also win for its race car sounds. And then the question also is, what's number 2? Is it One Battle with its action sequences? Is it Sinners with more of its music sequences, which they didn't really like? They didn't go with A Complete Unknown last year as an example. So I think the CAS winner, the BAFTA winner, which is usually right 8 of the last 10 years, the fact that it's a well-liked movie, Best Picture nominee, F1 fits the mold of a traditional winner for Best Sound. I think it's going to go for F1, Best Sound. Best Editing, I went with One Battle After Another. This is a movie that won the Ace Eddie Award. Now, so did Sinners, but because they weren't in the same category, but still won at the Ace Eddie Award. And then the kind of ultimate tiebreaker there was that the BAFTA Award went to One Battle After Another. So that's a strong sign. It has the Ace Eddie Award. You have American support, but also the BAFTA award. So you have that international support. Now, could we see a surprise? Absolutely. Last year, Anora won Best Editing with 0 precursors. The difference there, though, is Anora won a Best Picture. So if I'm going to make a distinction there, I'm going to go with One Battle After Another, which I'm also predicting for Best Picture. I tried to look at, okay, what's the runtime of past winners, or what's the type of winner that they usually like? There isn't a clear one, so I ultimately went with the one that has the most amount of precursors, with the Ace Eddie and the BAFTA, but I also think is going to win for Best Picture, and it's kind of long. There's a lot of editing to it. There's some fast-paced action sequences, too, so I do think the editing as a winner kind of makes sense as well. This was maybe more of a tougher category to predict, because you have that split in Ace Eddie, but the differentiator there was, well, in BAFTA, you only had one winner, and they went with One Battle After Another, so am I. Best Visual Effects, I went with Avatar, Fire and Ash. I debated this one. I thought maybe for a second it could be F1, or maybe it could be Sinners. I wasn't sure. I totally believed in the Avatar kind of love. I do think it's kind of decreasing, but what I think is notable is that the BAFTAs nominated Avatar, Fire and Ash for the exact same 2 categories as the Oscars did. So just like the Oscars, BAFTA didn't really love this movie either. And yet they gave the award for Best Visual Effects to Avatar. And they're very accurate at predicting the Visual Effects Award. In the last 10 years, the BAFTA Visual Effects Award winner has gone on to win the Oscars 7 out of the last 10 years. The 3 times it got it wrong, 2 of them, they gave it to movies that weren't nominated at the Oscars, in Poor Things and Black Panther. So we knew they weren't going to win because they weren't nominated at the Oscars. The other time was in 2015, which was the Ex Machina year, which was a very kind of surprise win and a chaotic year with not a clear contender. You have Avatar. The other 2 movies have won. They're visual effects, feasts. If you've seen the movies, there's very impressive visual effects. Even though this movie is not as well liked as the other 2, I still think is appreciated for its effects. It dominated at the VES Awards, winning pretty much every single major category. But ultimately, I went down to BAFTA and went the fact that they've gone 7 out of the last 10 winners, and the 3 times it got it wrong, 2 of them, they weren't even nominated at the Oscars. So theoretically, they probably would have gotten it right 9 out of the last 10 times. I think that's notable. They went with Avatar. Maybe I can go with more of a traditional winner like a Sinners or an F1. I wouldn't be surprised by that, but I do think I don't want to overthink this one too much. Just go with the chalk pick. Go with Avatar. Then for Best International Film, I went with Sentimental Value. And this was another debate for me. I think The Secret Agent is an absolute contender to win in this category as well. But frankly, it would be a surprise if The Secret Agent won for international film. The clear winner should be Sentimental Value. Why? Well, both of the movies were nominated for Best Picture, except that Sentimental Value has way more nominations. It totally overperformed at the Academy, and I've always thought it was going to do well at the Academy. Ever since I saw the film back in September, it feels like an Academy movie. I say that as someone who's covered the Oscars now for 10 years. So that made sense to me. It overperformed in editing and casting and even the Elle Fanning nomination. So when you compare the two movies, well, they're both nominated for Best Picture. They're both nominated international film. So what do we have to go off of? Oh, well, maybe the fact that, it's nominated for Best Director and The Secret Agent isn't. It's nominated in 4 acting categories. Secret Agent only has 1. All these kind of little small things, even something like Screenplay is nominated in, which The Secret Agent is not. Based on what the Academy has told us, theoretically, it should be an obvious pick for Sentimental Value. And yet I'm still concerned, I'm still scared, because we saw at the Golden Globes, they had more nominations for Sentimental Value, and still they went with The Secret Agent. Why? I'm not necessarily sure. Maybe the same thing will happen here at the Academy, and they're all going to go, even though we gave Sentimental Value a lot of nominations, they feel more of an international connection to The Secret Agent. I'm not going to bet on that surprise ultimately, though. I'm going to say and assume that the Academy is somewhat logical. If they are predicting it in director and screenplay and all these other, nominations in acting, and those are things that the Secret Agent doesn't have, theoretically there should be more support and broader support for Sentimental Value. It's not necessarily a guarantee, but it also happened at the BAFTA Awards where it beat out The Secret Agent, so we have that at least on its side as well. I'm still a little bit nervous about it, as you can tell, but wanted to make the kind of smart, logical pick, that being the Sentimental Value. Now into the short categories. My pick for Best Animated Short, I went with Forever Green. This is a cute animal movie, and people who have been covering the Oscars for a long time know that in particular the animated category, the cute animal movies almost always win. When you think of movies like Piper, The Boy, the Mole, and the Fox, those are animal movies that do well. Usually movies either in English or without any dialogue do well. International movies don't do very well in the shorts categories. So this movie, not in English or any other language, it's silent. I think will have kind of a universality appeal to it as well. So in a year where there's no clear winner for Best Animated Short, no major talent, I wanted to go with kind of the cute movie that maybe reminded people of a Disney or a Pixar, that has that emotion, that can appeal to a lot of different types of people, and is a typical type of a winner. Forever Green is my pick. Then for Best Documentary Short, I went with All the Empty Rooms. This is from Netflix and is about the victims and people who lost their lives of school shootings. And when I wanted to pick this category, I'm the most confident in this just because, first off, you have Netflix, which usually does well in the shorts categories, usually picking up one or multiple Oscars for the shorts. They do very well both at campaigning, getting their movies seen, but then also picking the right movies and picking quality films. I think the very emotional subject matter of school shooting victims is going to resonate with many members of the Academy. When I think about past winners in this category in particular, whether that be The Queen of Basketball, which is about American college basketball, or The Only Girl in the Orchestra, which is about a New York American orchestra player, or even The Last Repair Shop, which is a California-based film, they're all kind of American-centric issues. Well, guess what? There's nothing more American-centric of an issue than school shootings, which I think will really resonate with a lot of members of the Academy. All the Empty Rooms it has a gut punch of a kind of ending as well, very emotional. So a movie that's going to be well seen, that has been well campaigned by Netflix, that usually wins here, and that has a very American point of view. All those things I think ultimately add up to All the Empty Rooms being the winner here. And then my final prediction for Best Live Action Short, I went with A Friend of Dorothy. And I went with this one because usually the winners of this category are usually longer movies, 20 minutes or longer. A Friend of Dorothy is on the longer side of the nominees, just over 20 minutes long. So that feels good. It feels like it has substance. Miriam Margolyes is in the film. Usually the live action shorts that have stars in them do well. Think of The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar with Benedict Cumberbatch, or The Long Goodbye with Riz Ahmed. Stars really do help in terms of making things like, I'm going to vote for the Miriam Margolyes short, or I'm going to vote for the Riz Ahmed short. It fits that mold. It's very sweet. It's very charming, heartwarming. We've seen that do well in this category in particular in the past with movies like An Irish Goodbye. It's also in English. We've seen foreign movies movies do not do very well in all the shorts categories, but also in best live action short. They usually go with the English pick. This is a movie that's in English, so it checks off a lot of my boxes. It's not a movie that everyone is predicting, but I like the fact that it's got stars, it's heartwarming, it's long, it's in English. It kind of checks a lot of my boxes. So ultimately I had to kind of use my brain here. In the shorts categories, it's always tough to predict, so at least you want to go with the one that makes logical sense on paper and see how you do. Ultimately, that's what led me to A Friend of Dorothy. But that's about it, guys. A whole long video of all the Oscar categories, my predictions in every single one. Let me know in the comments down below your predictions. If you think One Battle After Another is going to win, or Sinners, do you have Timmy or MBJ? Who is your pick for supporting actress? Love to hear that in the comments down below. And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out my reactions video. And then we're not going to go away. Into the summer, we're going to be talking about all different kinds of things, an award-centric kind of summer series, which is going to be a lot of fun this year. So I hope you stick around for that. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.